I'm still recovering from being ill, so I'm not doing anything outside, but I thought I'd start making up these new front brake lines. This is the one that would go to the near side front wheel, and that goes to the brake proportioning valve. It's had a repair in the past where somebody has sectioned it and joined the original steel pipe to copper with that crazy union, which has worked, and it doesn't leak, but it's not particularly elegant. And then in this corner, we've actually got some fairly well developed corrosion, so I'm not happy about that because it'd be easy to for that to just keep on rusting and then finally blow out. And that's the one that I think, well, it just does that wheel, but yeah, still don't want brake failure. So I've got my brass unions and bits and bobs bucket, some brake line stuff, an old school brake flaring tool, brake pipe flaring tool, and I've found the unions that I need, so I'm going to start forming an end on that and then bending it to shape to follow that one. Thought I'd show the tool in detail just in case you haven't seen this before. Basically, you trim your pipe, get it cut off exactly perpendicular if you can, and then deburr it with a file or similar, because the more uniform you make that end, the nicer this tool will work. What you do is then you fit the pipe through there. The two sides get clamped together by these bolts here. Those go right the way through and crush it so that this cannot move then. Then, with another tool, you screw this forward, like so. And that basically, because this can't move, it crushes the end of the pipe backwards and forms the profile on the end that you need. You got two ends. That is the flaring tool for a female union, and that is the more conventional sort of tool for doing that sort of end. It takes a bit of a knack to get it right, so I'll expect I'll have to do a couple before I get it perfect. The same process, I really should write down what I do every time I use it successfully, because it doesn't always work. So that's the pipe clamped in there. Before nipped them up tight, I wound this in just so it's starting to push that back. Then I'm going to wind this in. I don't go mega tight because I like to have a little bit of give still in the copper in there. So when you do actually, do up a union into something like that, it's got that little bit of give to make a nice crushed joint. So I'm just going to go easy on this, do that up, and then I'll break it into two and show you what it looks like. So I've just gone hard enough to feel it starting to become resistant to any further motion, and now I'm going to back it off and see what it looks like. So that's the end starting to be formed, but we're not quite there yet. What some people do is also put a little drop of grease in here to help lubricate that surface onto that one to stop it ripping it up. We eventually want to finish with something that looks like that, so you can see how much farther we've got to go. So I'll put it back in there, I'll align that sort of bump in the shape with the inside of that tool, just so I've got it in the right place, and then nip it up a bit more. So by doing this you can see where the tool was. So I'm going to put it back in the same place so that as I crush it up, it's not sort of changing its location in there. Right, so that was with a bit more power, or a bit more force. You can see we've started to get that mushroom beaded end to it. I also gave it a drop of WD-40 just to act as a bit of a lubricant. So if you remember, that's what we're going for. So we've got our round bead. That would be fine if you were doing that sort of fitting to look like that. But we of course want a female, so this is what you use the other end of the tool for. Once you've formed that bit, you basically reverse the tool, put that in, and then just crush it in a little bit to give you that female flanged end. So it's exactly the same process, just with this rod turned the other way around. This will be set back in there in the same place. Then I'll just screw that forward to just put an indentation in the end of that. So that's the tool back together. Don't know whether you can see, but there are two lines in there, like machined into that central rod. And what you do is you just fasten this bit up again until that line there is now up against the body of there. So that's what I'll do. So that's done. We've got our female end, which looks rather like, oops, that one. And we'll go nicely when I come to fit that back into the car. So now what I've got to do is unwind that and curve it to roughly the right shape and length, trim it off, and then swage the other end. So I've just unwound along length the copper. I've put a screwdriver in the vise, and then I'm going to very gently bend this around it, roughly following the shape that I need. One thing to be aware of, I find this stuff, the more you work it, the stiffer it gets, and the less nicely it wants to curve and bend. So then you can rework it. It's best off to get the curves in the right place the first time, otherwise it just looks shit. So I've got the very rough shape. I don't want to follow this one too religiously because that obviously has been made by somebody else, not Rover. So I've put in probably larger radius curves than I need. And I'll firm up the shape when I go out to the car. I've also left this a bit long because there was some wrestling with the car when I took this one out, so some of these curves aren't quite right. So I'm going to go out to the car now and just offer it up and then firm up some of these curves. Then I'll know exactly how much I have to lose or make up before I form the end on that. Well, I just offered it up to the car and it fitted like utter crap because whoever made the section which ran along there that had been repaired made it far too short. So I'm going to do what I probably should have done in the first place, which is just measure from there back to the firewall, and then I'll know roughly where to put my bend in. So what's that, 65, something like that. Yeah, so I'll have to do it that way. It's starting to look a bit better now. That will follow along there, go across the transmission tunnel. And then this end is all over the place, but that doesn't matter because I know I've got enough length there, and I know I've got more than enough on this end to just put a swoop neck in the end and then drop it into the brake proportioning valve, which will be there. So this is the last little bit to do. I've slid my union onto the end. Obviously I need a 90-degree bend in there, but if I put that in now, I'll never get the I'll never get enough pipe into my swaging tool or my beading tool, so I'm going to chop that to length, then form the end, and then bend it into 90. So just finished forming that end. Job's a good one. Now I just need to bend the 90 degrees on. So screwdriver back in the vise, and then get bent. Job done. So the final shaping can be done when that's in the car, but I know the pipe's the right length. It'll follow the curves of the bulkhead and the chassis rails, and it will miss the steering column, so pretty happy with that. I'm debating now whether to try and paint this stuff green. I don't like it when this stuff's in an engine bay and it tarnishes and looks rubbish, so I might see if I can find something suitable to paint it with. No idea how well paint's going to stick to copper. I don't see why with some acid etch it shouldn't paint up okay, but I'll do some experimenting and see what happens.